Come on in, pull up a chair and take a load off because today I'm going to review and page through Pathfinder, the Seventh Arch from Paizo Inc. Will players and game masters find themselves in seventh heaven with this first chapter of the new Gatewalkers adventure path? Or would you be better served locking that gate and walking right on by? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host, here at the Gaming Gang channel. As mentioned in the open, today I'm going to review and page through Pathfinder, the Seventh Arch from Paizo Inc. This is the first of 3 parts in the new Gatewalkers adventure path. It's written by James L. Sutter with Patrick Greaney, and there are a slew of artists who contributed to this adventure. We'll take a peek at that credit page in just a moment. The 94-page softcover arrived in stores this week. It carries an MSRP of $26.99, or you can grab just the PDF alone for $19.99. I also do believe that this is available for most major virtual tabletops right now. All right, all that said, let's swing on over to the other camera because here I've got the Seventh Arch. So a few things I do want to mention before we dive on in. First off, the fine folks over at Paizo Inc. were kind enough to provide me with this review copy, but neither I nor anyone else affiliated with the Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this review with you. These days, it's very important that you know that. Also, if you follow the Gaming Gang, especially if you visit thegaminggang.com, you probably already know that Sammy Uhas actually writes up the vast majority of our Pathfinder and Starfinder reviews. So you might be curious, Jeff, how come you're going to review this adventure path? Doesn't Sammy usually do the adventures? And you would be right, yes. But because I launched a new series, the Paizo Preview, where I share a video look at the newest releases of that month for Pathfinder and Starfinder, I do want to delve a bit further into the adventure paths than I normally do. Because normally I would do like a first look video, and then Sammy does the reviews. So because I want to talk a little more intelligently about the current adventure paths that we'll be looking at in these previews, I'm going to take on this adventure path for review. But don't worry, Sammy's still doing a bunch of reviews, not only for Paizo products, but for other publishers too. So stay tuned. All right, we're not going to look at each and every page of this, but I do want to give you a good feel for what's in the Seventh Arch and share my thoughts about it too. Plus, this is an adventure, and as much as I try to stay as spoiler-free as possible, here there be spoilers. There's going to be no way to avoid some spoilers to this adventure. So if you're a player hoping your game master is going to run the Gatewalkers adventure path, I would definitely recommend tune out now. You don't want the surprises of the adventure ruined because you watched this review. But with that said, you may want to tell your GM to check out this video so they can make an informed buying decision regarding this adventure. All right, let's look at the back of the book. Through the arch. In an instant, thousands vanished. Those who returned came back with strange powers, but without their memories of that fateful night. Seeking answers, the player characters searched the hallowed forests of Seven Arches, finding paranoid townsfolk, violent druids, and an enigmatic boogeyman pulling strings from the shadows. Can the party unravel the schemes of Kanipo the Slim? How does an ancient curse relate to their missing memories? And what awaits them beyond the Seventh Arch? The Gatewalkers adventure path begins in the 7th Arch, a complete adventure for 1st to 4th level characters. Let's dive on in. So as I mentioned, we got a lot of artists involved in the production right here. I would read their names, but I would butcher a vast majority of them. So I prefer not to. But the artwork throughout, very, very solid. Pretty uniform too, which I like to see. One of the first things I did notice about this adventure is the back of the front cover and the front of the back cover are journal entries. They're not maps. Usually I'm used to seeing maps. A few things to mention before we kind of delve into the adventure itself. For one, if you're the game master, I would certainly recommend having a copy of Dark Archive. It's going to make your life a bit easier because the player characters have deviant abilities now. That's what happened when they walked through these gates, these arches, and returned. They now have these abilities they didn't have before. So there's a lot more detail and a variety of these different abilities for the players to choose from than you would find, say, in the player's guide for the Gatewalkers adventure path. Now, there are some streamlined rules and a few options in that player's guide, but Dark Archive is going to have far more options for the player characters. I should also mention that you'll probably want to have the Bestiary Volume 3 if you're the game master, because maybe it's my imagination, but it did feel like there's a lot of reference to creatures from this volume as opposed to anywhere else outside of the toolkit, which is included in this adventure where we've got new creatures. So just letting you know that to get the most out of this adventure, I would no doubt probably recommend having Dark Archive and the Bestiary Volume 3. So overall, what's going on with this adventure? So the player characters found themselves going through these elven gates, these arches, which I know a lot of people have been very curious about since I believe it's the Age of Ashes adventure path. I gotta be honest, I did not review that adventure path in full, so I can't tell you if that's the case, but I thought that's where they kind of made an appearance previously. So anyway, the player characters went through these gates. Now, they weren't the same gates. They could be, these arches are all over Golarion. But what happened is, for some reason, they walked through, and then thousands of people did this. Many never returned. They've never been seen again. But the player characters and others did come back. Some were gone hours, some were gone days. None of them have any memory of what took place on the other side of these gates. And they also, many of them, have strange new powers. So the player characters have gathered as part of a group which is being overseen by this doctor who also found themselves going through one of these gates. And of course, like I said, no one has any memory of what happened. It's called the missing moment. So the player characters are investigating. And one angle that they're investigating is this town of Seven Arches, where there's a curse that actually prevents elves from entering this forest. In fact, the curse would rob them of their memories, and then they would start to shrivel up. So, but the funny thing is, since the night when people walk through these arches, that curse may have been lifted. So the player characters are, for one, investigating if the curse is actually lifted, and if it has been lifted, what is the connection? So that's how we kick off the adventure. Now, this doctor that they're part of this group, this organization, really doesn't play much of a role in this first adventure, although it seems as if they are going to be an important NPC later in the adventure path. So the player character is going to learn of this offshoot of the druids who rule over this town. They are a violent group of rebels who are not only looking to keep elves out, they're looking to keep all humanoids out because they're just like so far to the point of, you know, humans and humanoids don't belong in the forest. Even they really shouldn't be in the forest. And of course, they have stolen something that the player characters need, so they have to try to obtain that. So they're going to try to find where these druids are located. And there's quite a lot going on, a lot of combat taking place. They find themselves in this gnome village with this like main house, which is where these druids have kind of taken up their headquarters. And the player characters will find the seventh arch, which is not 7 arches. They are different. So, and the player characters learn some things behind the scenes there as well. So there is a whole backstory of what's going on and what caused this missing moment and why did the player characters and all these other people walk through the arches. I am not going to talk about that because it is actually something that I can keep spoiler free. So it is also something that I think we're going to encounter a big bad at the end of this adventure path, which is what's behind this whole going through the gates, getting these powers, and so forth. So the player characters are going to have to do battle with these druids, and they're going to learn of this shadowy fey trickster, this shadowy fey creature, Kanipo the Slim. It was actually a very cool NPC. I could really see utilizing Kanipo the Slim, using that voice. And it's kind of funny because Kanipo refers to themselves as the Slim. And they have actually a cool plot, which involves the player characters. So the second act of this adventure is the player characters investigating this Kanipo the Slim that they learn about. And Kanipo the Slim learns of the player characters as well. So you should, as the game master, kind of approach this where he's kind of haunting the player characters. And he actually resides on a sliver of the first world. So it's another plane that is kind of bleeding into the material plane on Galarian. And kind of interesting there too, it's called the Thin Lands. And there's a village on the edge of the Thin Lands, which is now being attacked by these shadowy creatures. And the townsfolk are all paranoid and scared. So another aspect of the adventure that a clever game master can really, really play up. So eventually, the player characters are going to find themselves in the Thin Lands. They're going to encounter Kanipo the Slim. They're going to learn of his master plan. And player characters might figure out this master plan before then, or they might be surprised to learn about it when they finally encounter Kanipo the Slim face to face. So the third act, the player characters are going to find themselves traveling through the seventh arch and finding themselves on an alien world. Yes, that's right. And if I were running the seventh arch, I would make this alien world to be similar, because it is kind of similar to Galarian, but then throw out some subtle differences right off the bat, right when the players arrive, because they don't know that they're on another planet. They think they're just in another area of Galarian. And then they they find this city off in the distance. And it turns out that this planet is actually mainly populated by these elves. There are some other cultures and species that are there, which we don't get into a lot of detail about in the adventure itself. And this third act, Memories of the Green, finds the player characters on this alien world working with these elves to try to find a way to go back home because they can't go back through the arch. The way these arches are designed is they just go to one place. So, and they find that they can't go through the arch again. So pretty interesting. And of course, now the player characters are going to have some quests that they have to fulfill. A good amount of combat going on throughout this entire adventure. And I will talk about that when I kind of sum up my thoughts about the Seventh Arch. Personally, I feel it's a little too heavy into the combat aspects. But then again, kind of an aspect of modern adventure design anyway. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So anyway, the player characters are trying to make their way back to Golarion. If they're successful in these quests, then they will. So one of the aspects of this adventure that I really like is we get some page space devoted to this alien planet, this Castrovel. And I really like it because at the end of the third act, there's kind of discussion about the player characters can continue to have adventures on this alien world. They don't necessarily have to get right back to Golarion to move on to the next adventure in the adventure path. Plus, there's a new archetype that's really cool in the toolbox that the player characters, it's probably aimed more at magic users than non-magic users, but it's an archetype that the players can take on. But they're not going to be able to take it on if they don't spend time on the planet and make, connections. So I thought it was really cool that we get various different adventure sites on the planet, some ideas about adventures on Castrovel, as well as some of the other species that are there. So then we get into the adventure toolbox. We get some new items. We get a new spell. As I mentioned before, we get this new archetype, the Sky Sage, which has some very interesting feats. See, these elves on the planet are really, well, the elves that the player characters deal with are devoted to astrology and astronomy. And that's kind of the aspect of this archetype as well. So we get some new creatures. And then, of course, we're going to wrap up with our two big bads. The leader of the rebel druids, as well as Kanipo the Slim. One aspect that I think is kind of funny is Kanipo refers to himself as the Slim all the time. I would probably play this NPC up as talking in the third person a lot, referring to itself as the Slim in the third person. I think that would be kind of interesting. Very cool NPC. Really do like the NPC quite a bit. And that is going to wrap up what is in the adventure for the Seventh Arch, the first part of the Gatewalkers Pathfinder campaign. So let's swing on over to the other cameras so I can share some final thoughts as well as my review score. So if you are a follower of the Gaming Gang and you've seen my role-playing game coverage, you know that I come from the old school of fantasy role-playing games. So some aspects of modern adventure design doesn't quite jive with the way I like to run adventures. Now, that doesn't make it a bad thing. It just means that I prefer to run adventures a certain way. And I think most game masters are like that as well. Unfortunately, this adventure does have some of those aspects that I'm not overly keen on, which are too many combats that cannot be avoided, as well as limited interactivity with the environment or with the encounter environment. So, as far as the combat, there's a lot of combat encounters in this adventure that the player characters cannot avoid. They cannot resolve these non-violently. Has to be combat. And I know there are a lot of people out there who really enjoy a lot of combat in their game sessions, and that's cool. I've got no issue with how you like to enjoy your role-playing games. I personally don't like my adventure sessions to feel like they're devolving into just one long combat after another, where that's all that's going on. So I would actually change things up a bit by including some more non-violent ways to resolve some of these encounters. Plus, to be honest, many of these creatures and NPCs are intelligent enough to either surrender or flee if they're reduced to a certain number of hit points. So if they can communicate, they should be intelligent enough to maybe parlay. Once again, just me. And I would have liked to have seen more interactivity that's not combat related. Because one other aspect of modern adventure design that doesn't always make sense to me is every area on an encounter map has to have something in it. Wasn't always the case with old school adventures. There can be locations that really don't have anything exciting for the players to do. They just quickly move through and they're on to another room or another area that might have something cool to fight or to encounter or to interact with. Don't really see that too much in this adventure. Now, am I going to really ding the Seventh Arch for these aspects? No, not at all, because it is a modern adventure, which is just pretty much taking a modern design approach. So, and there's also a lot of things that I really do like about the Seventh Arch. I love the fact that we get some information about further adventures on the alien world. I definitely dig that quite a lot. There are cool NPCs. There are cool creatures. There are cool set piece encounters in the adventure too. So it's not as if I would throw everything out. Just some of them I would tweak. That's all. I like Kanipo the Slim quite a bit. And I could really see taking the reins of that NPC and really creeping my gang out with it. So there is that also. I think this is a solid kickoff to a brand new adventure path. Myself personally, with the alien world, once the players realize they're on another planet, I would kind of make the planet as trippy as I could, because the eventual big bad that I think the player characters are going to have to take on feels like it would kind of fit into that sort of realm. So I would kind of try to make it a bit of a kind of like a science fantasy world where things are a little psychedelic kind of. I think that's kind of the direction I would go with the alien planet. Anyway, like I said, all in all, definitely think this is a worthwhile addition to your adventure collection. I am interested to see where the Gatewalkers adventure path goes from here. So on a scale of 0 to 10, I give the Seventh Arch a very solid 7 out of 10. I do recommend it. And just myself personally, I would tweak a few things about the adventure. But if you are into the modern style of adventure design, you shouldn't have any issue at all. All right. That is it for this time out. If you like the video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. If you do subscribe, ding that bell. It will not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it will also inform you when my live stream, the Gaming Gang Dispatch, airs Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Central, right here on YouTube, as I share the latest in tabletop gaming news and first looks at tabletop games. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all latest in tabletop gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more that you won't find on the YouTube channel. All right, you know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Thank you very much for taking time out to check out this video. And until I see you next time, here's hoping you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang. Oh, hey, you're still here. That's okay. You don't have to leave just yet. In fact, why don't you subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel right here, or take a peek at the latest live stream, or even find out what YouTube recommends you check out from the channel. And of course, I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks again for watching.